So what we have here is an 8.5 foot 5-weight. We're going to talk about some spey casting. Of course, the minute you talk about spey casting, people go, well, no, that's a whole different thing. You got to have a big rod and stuff. That's the misleading part of this whole casting. And by that I mean it's basically a roll cast with a change of direction option. That's all spey is. And it's all about roll casting. It's all about getting an anchor, setting an anchor up close to you, getting a D-loop. A D-loop is something that forms behind you in the shape of a D, and that gives you loads the energy so that when you make the forward cast, the water is the resistance that makes the cast. You don't have to do any false casting. You don't have to do any hauling. You don't have to do any of that stuff to make it work. Roll casting is a way to get your line out straight, number one, but with this kind of line and this kind of casting, it's a way to manipulate the line so that you can be in tight quarters and still get a nice cast off. It's amazing just how well it works. This line, like I said, is a line designed for this type of casting. It'll do in close fishing or casting, and you can get some distance with it. The difference with this roll cast is that it don't stop. In other words, we're going to come around and do a Belgian cast, and what a Belgian cast is just a circle. You're just creating a half circle above you. So if I come around with this rod in circle, my fly touches right here. That's called your anchor. Boom, it's gone. In this system here, we use a little bit longer leader. I got a 12-foot leader on this 5-weight rod right now, so it'll roll over nice. It anchors well. It casts very well. So what I'm saying is here is I have a 5-weight rod. I have a 5-weight fly line. This line happens to be designed by Scientific Anglers. It's called their SBT, which SBT stands for short belly taper. It's 26 foot long in the head, in the total length of the line. And the grain weight is a little bit heavier. It's about 15 grains heavier than a standard weight forward line. And that's what gives you the load on the rod and decreases the amount of effort you have to put into the cast. You know, you can use a standard weight forward. You don't have to have this type of line, but it works a lot better because it's designed to do this kind of casting. If you're familiar with the Leibowitz triangle taper, that's exactly what this taper is on this rod, or on this line. It's just heavy at the butt, runs down to a nice finish at the end. I got a 12-foot leader on the end of this rod right now. So we got the orange part is the meat of the weight, and right at the end where she starts to turn green, that's your running line. And when we do this kind of casting, we're going to have about a foot, maybe 15 inches of that running line outside the rod tip. If you're going to use a single-handed rod with a standard weight forward line, make sure you get some of the running line just a little bit hanging out off the end of it. And the reason for that is it creates the ability to make a cast. It's just unbelievable. So with that in mind, I got a foot of overhang right now. Overhang is the amount of running line I've got from the tip of the rod down to the base of the head. So you can see that orange line, and then there's a little piece of green there. That's my overhang. So basically, this line is nothing more than a roll casting line designed to do spey casting. So here we go. It's just amazing how well it works with absolutely no effort. I mean, you can't cast a spinning rod any easier than that. And that applies to the big rods also. But we're talking today just about this single-handed little 5-weight. So the whole key of this kind of casting is to come over the top and go. There's no dipping, there's no rising. In other words, you don't come around and go like this and like that because it won't work. The technique is this. You're going to draw it up, draw a circle with the rod tip, and make the cast. I'm telling you, it's the easiest, and I've been fly casting since 1970, or 68 actually, and teaching it since 1976. And when I learned about this kind of casting, I very rarely hardly ever cast any other way than spey cast. Because they're a 40, 50-foot cast right there with doing absolutely nothing. All I have to do is make sure my anchor, and the anchor is, I'll bring it back and stop. I want that anchor about right there. This is the hardest part of learning this casting. Right there, like I said, right about there. So when you see that anchor hit, you go. There's no pause. So it's up, anchor, go. Whew. Here we go. We're going to bring it back in the spot. Right there. Right there. It's the hardest thing to learn about. There it is, right there. That was a perfect one. It's the hardest thing to learn is where you put that anchor. But you do not want rises, you don't want dips, you don't want any of that stuff because it just kills everything. It's a nice, smooth transfer of energy. Now, the rod comes up nice and smooth, it circles the tip, anchor, and go. Right there. 45, 50-foot cast with doing nothing, no haul, no nothing. You can, by the way, add a haul to it if you like, but you don't have to. It doesn't, it performs so well, I don't think you have to haul it. I rarely use a haul with this type of line. It's a floating line. We now have, at Scientific Anglers now makes a line similar to this here that you can put sinking tips on, so you can get down a little bit deeper. But for the time being, we're just going to talk about a floating line right now. There's all kinds of casts you can make. Say I'm out in that direction. I want to go towards that boat out there. I just screw that tip around and go out that direction. Wind caught it there at the last, but nevertheless, my point is that. Or you can just screw it back to where you were. There's not that big a change in how you do this because everything still has to have that anchor. That anchor means the fly kisses the water. Kiss and go, right there. And I did no hauls, no nothing. If I take that fly and drop it back like this, there comes my fly, come around, make the cast. There's all kinds of casts. That was called the snap tee. This was snake roll. Snake roll to the left. Snake roll to the right. There's all kinds of casts. You hear about them, and a lot of them you don't have to know, but this is a double spey. Come back around, make a cast. Just concentrate on two casts. And that is, one, just a simple pick up, kiss, and go. That's one cast. And learn that snake roll. Just screw the tip around. Excuse me, got it around there. There we go. Too much overhang. That's what'll happen. If you've got too much overhang, it won't work. You've got to have about 1.5 feet, a foot maybe of overhang. Right there. You know, I could bring that line back and just drop it in a pile like this here. You go, oh man, boom, it's gone. That's the beauty of that kind of casting. Because once you got slack with a standard kind of casting, what you do is you pull all the line in, and then you start that damn that false casting to get the line back out again. This here, it's got all kinds of slack in it. You don't have to worry about it. Just come around and make the cast. That's why we spey cast. And that is really the essence of why it's so easy, so effective. Once I learned it from a friend of mine over in Milwaukee, I thought, and that was 16 years ago, I very rarely use a single-handed standard cast anymore. That is with a back cast and forward cast. Rarely. You don't have to. It's back, kiss, go. In a standard roll cast, you set it up like this. Basically, that's pretty much the letter D, kind of not a real good one, but it's kind of a letter D. And that's kind of how you set up a standard roll cast. You have this line drape behind you, which kind of looks like the letter D. And you come forward and you stop like that. That's what we're trying to achieve with a spey cast, only it doesn't pause, it doesn't stop. As an example, try to catch this. I drew that D loop, but I come right back and made the cast. There's no stop, there's no waiting. It's around, over, the top, and go. As you get better at it, you can get a V loop, much better loop. But let's for the time being stay with just a nice D-loop. Up, around, and over the top, and go. All right, and when I say that, because the problem we have when we first start this is you want to come up and dip, and everything drops. There's no D-loop, there's no nothing. Everything is shot. So it's there, you know, you come up and dip and try to make the cast. Well, the D-loop falls in the water behind you. If you're doing this casting and practicing it, and you hear that water rip behind you or see it rip behind you, you blew your D-loop. This D-loop will not touch the water this time. Now watch. It never touched the water back here. But if it does grab the water back there, the cast is over with. It's not going to go. Here we go. Right there. That's not going to go at all. It's got to stay in motion. That's the whole key to this casting, is staying in motion. So here we go. It's up. Circle the tip and go. That's the two things you do with this. That's kind of the hard thing to overcome with this kind of casting, but it doesn't take that long to learn. Up, around, over the top, and go. There's a cast that I use a lot called a C-Spey. I just drew a letter C, reverse C. When I come, if you watch this line rip open this water, they call it the white mouse. That loads the rod, and it just goes. It's amazing. Let me do that one more time here. So you're going to do is draw a letter reverse C, come around, and make the cast. And that cast is way too hard. Just around like this. Up, and go. Line's behind the reel. There we go. There, that was the whole thing. Took it all. So that's a right-handed C-Spey. You can do left-handed C-Speys. Let's just say we're out here. There's a snake roll that time. There's a C-Spey. Come around, make the cast. I'm going to do a left-handed C-Spey. Right there. Right there's a cast. And your line never stops. Once you go into motion, once you go, you go. Go and go. Do not stop. Because the minute you stop, here's what happens. Everything falls in the water behind you. Do one this way so you can see it fall in the water behind me. Now I got to rip that water open back here. It kills the cast. But when she stays in motion, it goes.